It is 96 degrees outside and your air conditioner is running full blast. You walk into your bedroom and it still feels like a furnace. The walls are radiating heat. The ceiling is breathing fire down at you. And your electricity bill last month was the highest it has ever been in your life. You have tried everything they told you to try. You sealed the windows, you changed the filters, you bought the smart thermostat that cost you $280 and promised to learn your lifestyle. And yet, here you are, sweating through your shirt at 9 o'clock at night inside your own home. Now here is what nobody is telling you. There are families living just a few counties away. No central air, no electric bill that would make you choke. And their homes are consistently 12 to 18 degrees cooler than yours on the exact same summer afternoon. I am not talking about people with money. I'm not talking about high-tech passive house architecture or some $40,000 renovation project you saw on a design blog. I'm talking about Amish farmhouses in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and Holmes County, Ohio, built with wood, stone, and a deep, almost spiritual understanding of how air and heat actually move through a structure. And once I show you what they know, you are going to look at your own home very differently. Let me take you back about 3 summers ago. I was driving through Sugar Creek, Ohio, a small town in Tuscarawas County where the roads go narrow and the farms stretch wide, and you start seeing the black buggies parked along fence posts like something out of a different century. I had pulled off on a gravel road because my car's temperature gauge was climbing and I needed a moment. An older man named Eli, broad-shouldered, bearded, wearing suspenders over a plain blue shirt, was working near a barn about 50 yards off the road. He waved the way people do in those parts, and I walked over. We started talking, the way you do when the world slows down for a moment, and I mentioned the heat. I said something like, "I don't know how you stand it without AC," half joking, half genuinely curious. He smiled, not in a condescending way, but in the way a man smiles when he knows something you don't. And he said, "Come inside for a minute." I followed him through the side door of the farmhouse, and I want you to understand what I felt when I stepped inside. It was cool, not just comfortable, genuinely cool, like walking into a space that had been quietly working all morning to stay that way. The outdoor temperature at that moment was 94 degrees Fahrenheit. I checked later. Inside that house, without a single piece of electric cooling equipment running, the temperature was 76 degrees. An 18-degree difference. I stood there for a second, genuinely confused. And Eli just chuckled softly and said, "The house breathes." That phrase stuck with me for months afterward. The house breathes. What does that even mean? And more importantly, why doesn't your house breathe? To understand the answer, you have to understand something about modern home construction that the industry would rather you not think too hard about. When builders construct a home today, they are not primarily thinking about how air moves through it. They are thinking about speed, cost, code compliance, and the systems, HVAC systems, that will be sold and installed into that home once it is built. Sealed attics became the standard, not because they are better for the homeowner, but because they accommodate certain insulation products and installation methods that are cheaper and faster to execute at scale. Think about that for a moment. Your attic, the single hottest, most thermally destructive space in your home, was designed to trap heat, not release it. On a 95-degree day, your attic can reach temperatures of 150 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not an exaggeration. That is a documented measurement from a University of Florida building science study conducted in 2004. 160 degrees of heat sitting directly above your ceiling, radiating downward into your living space 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all summer long. And your air conditioner is fighting that radiant heat constantly, like trying to bail out a boat while someone else keeps pouring water in. Now here is where it gets interesting. Amish construction. And before that, colonial American and European farmhouse construction, going back centuries, was built around a completely different principle. They understood something called the stack effect. Hot air rises. This is not a complicated idea. You learned it in elementary school. But the Amish built entire architectural systems around this single principle. When hot air rises and has a pathway to escape, cool air from below is drawn in naturally to replace it. The whole structure becomes a slow, quiet, continuous pump, pulling cool air in at the base and pushing hot air out at the top. No electricity, no refrigerant, no mechanical parts that can break, just physics, working for you all day, every day, for free. Music. But here is what makes the Amish approach different from just open a window. It is not random. It is engineered, carefully, thoughtfully, over generations of practical observation, to maximize the temperature differential between indoor and outdoor air. In Eli's farmhouse, the side door I entered through was positioned on the north-facing wall, deliberately, intentionally, specifically. The north side of a house receives the least direct sunlight, which means the air on that side of the structure is consistently 6 to 10 degrees cooler than air on the south or west side in the afternoon. By placing the primary intake on the north face, The house was drinking in the coolest available outdoor air. Meanwhile, at the peak of the roof and in the upper reaches of the attic space, Eli's grandfather had built a series of ridge vents, long, continuous gaps running the full length of the roof, that allowed the hot air to escape constantly and silently. The pathway was complete. Cool air in at the bottom, north side, hot air out at the top, all along the ridge. The stack effect was doing the work, and it never needed a filter change or a service call. Now I want to give you some historical grounding here, because I know some of you are skeptical. This is not folk wisdom or romanticism about the old days. This is documented, measured, peer-reviewed science that has been quietly sitting in university archives since the 1940s and 1950s. In 1952, researchers at the Texas Engineering Experiment Station, a division of Texas A&M University, published a report on passive ventilation in residential structures across rural central Texas. The study compared homes built with continuous ridge ventilation and deliberate cross-ventilation pathways against standard, sealed attic construction of the era. The results were striking. Homes with passive ventilation systems maintained indoor temperatures an average of 14.3 degrees Fahrenheit lower than sealed counterparts on peak summer days, without any mechanical cooling whatsoever. The study also measured attic temperatures, and the difference was even more dramatic. Passively vented attics ran 38 to 42 degrees cooler than sealed attics during afternoon peak heat. 38 to 42 degrees. That is the difference between your air conditioner working normally and your air conditioner running continuously without ever catching up. There was even earlier documentation, a 1947 housing research paper from the National Bureau of Standards that explicitly recommended ridge ventilation combined with low-side intake vents as the most cost-effective cooling strategy for American homes in warm climates. The paper was specific: 1 square foot of vent opening for every 150 square feet of attic floor space, with that ventilation split evenly between ridge, exhaust, and soffit intake. That research sat there. And slowly, quietly, as the HVAC industry grew into a multi-hundred billion-dollar annual enterprise, it just stopped being cited. Now let me ask you something. Who benefits when your home runs hot and inefficiently? When your attic is a 160-degree heat bomb sitting above your living room, trapping energy inside your structure and forcing your air conditioner to run for 8 or 10 hours a day? Who profits? Your utility company profits. The HVAC manufacturer profits when your overworked system wears out in 8 years instead of 15. The service technician profits from the twice yearly tune-up that your system now requires just to keep pace. I'm not saying these people sat in a room together and plotted against you. I'm saying that a system emerged, slowly, economically, practically, in which your home being thermally inefficient is very good for a lot of powerful industries and very expensive for you. And the solution, the simple, almost embarrassingly cheap solution, has been sitting in plain sight in Amish farmhouses and century-old rural homes all across this country for generations. So let me give you the first practical technique, and I want you to understand just how inexpensive and accessible this is before I describe it. Total cost, somewhere between $4 and $12. Time required, under 45 minutes. Tools needed, a flashlight and a ladder. Here is what you're going to do. First, go into your attic, or have someone go, and find your soffit vents. These are the vents located under the eaves of your roof along the lowest edge. In many homes, these vents exist but are blocked, not broken, not missing, blocked by insulation that was blown in and drifted across the vent openings, by cardboard baffles that were installed incorrectly or never installed at all, by debris that has accumulated over years. Studies from the Florida Solar Energy Center have found that in over 60% of homes inspected, soffit vents were partially or completely obstructed, meaning the intake side of the passive ventilation system was choked off, and the house could not breathe even if the ridge vents were working perfectly. What you need is a set of rafter baffles, also called vent chutes, which are simple plastic or cardboard channels that run from your soffit vent opening up into the attic space, keeping a clear pathway for air to enter regardless of how much insulation is present. You can buy a pack of 24 at any hardware store for $8 to $12. You slide them into position at each rafter bay above a soffit vent. You're not doing complicated carpentry. You are sliding a piece of formed plastic into a gap in your roof structure. Once those intake pathways are clear, outdoor air can actually enter the attic and push the hot, stagnant air out through whatever exhaust venting exists at the ridge or upper portion of the roof. The temperature difference in your attic, and consequently in the rooms directly below it, can drop by 15 to 25 degrees within the first 24 to 48 hours. That is not a promise. That is a documented, repeatable outcome from something that costs less than a fast food lunch. Now here is step 2, and this is where it gets slightly more involved, but still completely within reach of any homeowner. After you have cleared the soffit vents, walk around the outside of your home and look up at the ridge line, the very peak of your roof. What you are looking for is a ridge vent, a long, thin ventilation strip that runs along the top of the roof. If your home was built after 1995 or so, there's a reasonable chance you have one. If your home was built before that, or if you see individual round or rectangular turbine vents scattered across the roof rather than a continuous ridge vent, you may have a significant exhaust problem. Individual vents create dead zones between them where hot air sits and stagnates. A continuous ridge vent creates a uniform exhaust pathway across the entire length of the roof, exactly as Eli's grandfather built it in that Ohio farmhouse. If you have individual vents and want to improve performance without a full roof vent upgrade, there is a simple interim technique. Open the highest window in your home, ideally on the side of the house that faces the prevailing wind direction in your area, which is typically south to southwest in most of the continental United States. Then open a low window or door on the opposite side of the home, the north face. You have just manually created a cross ventilation pathway that mimics the stack effect. Hot air has an escape route at the top. Cool air has an entry point at the bottom. And the natural pressure differential between the warm upper air and the cooler lower air will begin to drive a slow, steady current through your home. In the early morning hours, between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m., outdoor air temperatures are typically at their lowest point of the day. If you have this cross ventilation pathway open during those hours and then close everything up tight before the heat builds, you are essentially loading your home with cool air like a thermal battery. The thermal mass of your walls, floors, and furniture absorbs that cool air temperature and releases it slowly throughout the day. This is exactly what farmers and homesteaders did before mechanical cooling existed. They called it catching the morning cool, and it is not folk poetry. It is a legitimate, effective strategy that can reduce your indoor temperature by 4 to 6 degrees by mid-afternoon without touching a thermostat. Now let me address the objections, because I know they are coming. Someone in the comments is already typing, "What about humidity?" And it is a fair question. Here's the honest answer. Passive ventilation is most effective in climates with low to moderate humidity. The Southwest, the Mountain West, the Central Plains, the Pacific Coast. In high humidity climates like the Gulf Coast or the Deep South, uncontrolled ventilation can introduce moisture that makes the air feel heavier. But even there, the morning ventilation technique works effectively during the early hours before humidity builds, and attic ventilation improvements, clearing those soffit vents and improving ridge exhaust, reduce radiant heat load regardless of outdoor humidity. The two issues are related but separate. A 40-degree attic temperature reduction doesn't care about outdoor humidity. It reduces heat radiation into your living space either way. Another objection. Won't open windows let in insects? Yes, which is why window screens exist, and why every window you open as part of this ventilation strategy should have a screen in place. The Amish farmhouse I visited had fine mesh screens on every lower vent opening. Not glamorous, not sophisticated, effective. And one more. My house is in a neighborhood. I can't control the orientation or the existing vent placement. That is a real limitation, and I respect it. But clearing your soffit vents and ensuring attic airflow is possible in virtually any home built in the last 50 years. The intake clearing technique requires no structural changes, no permits, no contractors, no expertise beyond the ability to read a measuring tape. That alone, just giving your attic the ability to exhale, is the single highest impact, lowest cost thermal improvement most homeowners can make, and almost none of them know it. Now let me take you to the advanced technique. This one is going to sound strange at first, and I need you to stay with me. In traditional farmhouse design, not just Amish, but also Appalachian, Midwestern rural, and even some older southern plantation design, kitchens were often built as separate structures, or positioned at the far end of the home from the sleeping areas. Part of this was fire safety, but part of it was thermal management. Cooking generates enormous heat. A gas stove burning at full flame raises the temperature in a standard kitchen by 8 to 12 degrees within 30 minutes. But here is what the old builders understood that most people don't. That heat is not just a problem. It is a tool. By deliberately generating a heat source at one end of a structure, you create a powerful low-pressure zone at the opposite end, pulling air through the entire building toward the heat source, which then exits through whatever exhaust pathway is available above it. In practical terms, this means that running your stove exhaust fan, or even cracking a window above your stove, during the evening hours creates an active airflow current that pulls cooler night air in from the far end of the house. The stove becomes a thermal pump. You're using the heat it generates not just to cook, but to actively drive ventilation through your entire home. One homeowner in Yavapai County, Arizona, a man named Robert Gallagher, who writes about self-reliant living, documented this technique and measured a 7-degree average temperature drop in his bedroom, located at the far end of the house from the kitchen, during evening hours when this deliberate stove exhaust ventilation was used. 7 degrees. In a bedroom. At the far end of the house, just from understanding how heat and air actually move through a structure. Now let me bring this back to something bigger, because I think there is a deeper truth buried inside all of this. Benjamin Franklin, who, among his many occupations, was a serious and observational scientist of everyday life, wrote in 1758 about the importance of what he called the economy of heat, by which he meant understanding where heat came from, where it went, and how a man might direct it to his advantage, rather than simply suffering its effects. He wrote, "The art of living well is largely the art of understanding what your house is doing around you. That line has stayed with me. Your house is doing something around you right now. It is collecting heat, storing it, radiating it, and making you uncomfortable and making someone else rich. Understanding what it is doing and redirecting it is not complicated. It is not expensive. It requires only the willingness to look at a very old problem through very old eyes. The Amish are not backward. They are not simply stubborn about technology. What they have preserved, sometimes without even being fully aware of it, is a practical, accumulated, multi-generational intelligence about how to live inside a structure on this planet without fighting the physics of it every single day." Eli's grandfather built that farmhouse with tools that would look primitive to a modern framing crew, but he built it with a knowledge of airflow, sun angle, thermal mass, and natural pressure differentials that most modern architects never studied, and most modern builders never learned. And, as a result, 3 generations later, on a 94-degree afternoon in Sugar Creek, Ohio, his grandson can invite a stranger through the door and offer them cool, still, quiet air without flipping a single switch. So here is what I want you to do this week. Go into your attic, take a flashlight, find your soffit vents, the low vents under the eaves, and look at whether they are open or blocked. If they are blocked by insulation, clear a path. If you do not have vent baffles installed, pick up a pack at the hardware store. Then look at your ridge line from the outside and assess whether you have a continuous ridge vent or scattered individual vents. Then, tonight or tomorrow morning, try the cross ventilation technique. Open the highest window on your prevailing wind side. Open a low window or door on the north face, and sit in the room between them and feel what starts to happen. Feel the air move. That movement is not comfort you purchased. That is physics working for you, the way it worked for every human being who ever lived in a house before 1950. Tell me in the comments what you find when you check those soffit vents. I'm genuinely curious how many of you discover they are partially or completely blocked, because every time I ask this question, the number is far higher than people expect. Also tell me your climate, humid, arid, mixed, so we can have a real conversation about what works best in your specific conditions. If this opened your eyes even slightly to what your house has been doing without your knowledge, share it with someone who is looking at a high electricity bill right now and wondering what they are doing wrong, because they are probably not doing anything wrong. Their house just never learned to breathe, and next time, I'm going to show you something even older and even more counterintuitive. A wall construction method used in the American Southwest and in parts of North Africa that keeps indoor temperatures stable at 72 to 74 degrees, regardless of outdoor heat, using nothing but the earth itself. No insulation, no vapor barrier, no mechanical systems, just a building material so old it predates writing, and so effective that modern thermal engineers are quietly studying it again. Stay with me, because what you do not know about your house is costing you every single month